and welcome to another episode. In this episode, I've got someone very special here. We're sat here with John Long. Now, John Long, that might not be a name that everybody knows straight away, but you will know the scene in which John was part of in Moonraker. John was the hang glider pilot that flew over the Iguazu Falls in South America. So we're going to have a chat with John. Hi John, how are you today?
Very well, wonderful seeing you.
So we're going to talk about your role in the film. So let's start at the beginning. How did you even get the job of being the hang glider in the James Bond film?
Well, there's a bunch of American guys who were supposed to be doing it, but they made such demands that the crew decided, or Mr. Broccoli decided, that an Englishman would be less trouble. And somebody suggested it, and Mr. Broccoli said to him, well, go and find one. They went to the factory that was producing pirate hang gliders in this country, up in Buckinghamshire. They recommended me. They spoke to the insurance man on the Isle of Wight. He recommended me. There was Chris Distin, the secretary of the British Hang Gliding Association, and when they asked him who to have, he said, well, who've you got? And they said my name, and he said, well, he'll do. So I came fairly highly recommended.
Right. Okay. Did you have your own? Did you have your own equipment? Did they supply the equipment for you?
They supplied everything apart from the fuel tanks. I designed the fuel tank to go above the wing on the king post, and they liked the look of that. It did work, and they got me to get 3 more made, which we took out in a big suitcase. Right.
So we know that, well, some people may or may not know, the Bond fans will probably know that not all of that scene was filmed in South America. Some of it was filmed somewhere else, right?
Yeah, we did some in Brazil, some in Argentina. The Iguazu Falls are between the two. So I took off in Brazil and crashed in Argentina. I gave the helicopter pilot permission to land on the lawn of the hotel. He thought I'd been to somebody to find out, but I just gave him permission, so that went well. The takeoff we did in the Everglades, Miami, and that went tickety-boo really. Really well.
How long were you in Miami?
Well, I don't know, a week or two. I used to go every day to the production office to ask if I could go home.
Right.
And they said that I was the only one who used to do that.
Right.
Because everybody else wanted to stay there.
Right.
But I wanted to come back to Somerset.
That's fantastic. Now I saw on the making of Moonraker, there's some info on there, and they shortly talk about your scene in that, and they talk about you, and they said that they needed permission from 3 different countries to fly over the Iguazu Falls for some reason, and you did several attempts flying over before you actually did the. Is that true, or is that?
Well, it's not true. I should have done.
Right.
The helicopter pilot and I discussed it the night before the flight, and we thought it would be sensible to fly over at, say, 500 feet, then go down to a low level, which is what they wanted. But I flew 8 miles from the Argentinian airport, and couldn't get above about 150 feet. It was so hot and the air was thin, the glider just would not climb.
Right.
So I think 3 countries that you're thinking about would have been Argentina, Brazil in Paraguay.
Right. Okay. So it's probably that that border is
Yeah,
probably there, and
it is.
and that's why they
Yeah,
needed the permission from all the countries,
Yeah.
so that just in case you flew somewhere else. Okay. So so you were in Miami for that time. How long were you in South America for?
I don't know, it seemed like years. Probably 4 or 5 weeks.
Okay. And that was just training or making sure that I mean, it was...
It was pretty obvious from the start that we weren't going to be able to do it. So I suggested that they plank over the back of a pickup truck and I tried taking off from there. We tried that, but it must have been about 55 miles an hour before I could get off, which was very dangerous. I did that once and it was obvious to everybody that wasn't going to work.
Right. Okay. So that was. I mean, we know that hang gliding back then wasn't as safe as it is today. It was a dangerous sport. I mean, it was if you didn't follow the rules exactly, right?
I think if you followed the rules, the chances of coming out alive was about 2 to 1 or something.
Right. So it was always a pretty dangerous thing. You were telling me earlier about, if the nose went up, then you could flip, and that was basically, was basically your way out. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, the line of thrust was about 3 or 4 feet above your body, and if the glider went light, as all aircraft do when they hit a pocket, the machine would overtake you. You would stay still, and that would go around you, and you'd be upside down.
Right.
A friend of mine did actually in Mir go through the cell.
Right. Okay.
He lived.
Oh, right. He lived.
Brian Milton, very famous man, but he was very, very lucky.
Right. What was the most dangerous thing about flying over the Iguazu Falls? What was the...
Well, the fact that I was losing height. There was no ground beneath me because in the end the river was higher than I was, and that was a bit disconcerting. So I said in the radio, I'm going to have to crash now. I didn't want to go into one of the waterfalls because that would obviously be curtains, and saw this little bit of jungle. They call it a receding fall or something, and the ground slips away and there was this piece of ground with some trees on, so I dived in there.
Right. We're actually gonna watch a part of that clip now. We're gonna watch the clip where first of all we see Bond in the speedboat going along the river, and then the chase, and then obviously the part where you take over and play Bond. Well, you are actually Bond for that time. So let's have a look at that, and we can talk about the rest afterwards.
And I've got something to get him there, if 007 can be trusted to look after it.
This is a good bit.
So this was this in Miami, or was this in? I mean, where did they film this scene? That looks like the Everglades to me.
It is.
It is the Everglades.
Yeah. Yeah. V8 speedboats.
So this is where the chase starts. Yeah, brilliant. So this is actually, I heard that they used one stretch of the Everglades and they just kept going up and down, and using parts of it, but So there's Jaws, your friend. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was the one chasing you.
Same height as me, but only when he was sat down.
He sat down, yeah. Yeah. Like I said, this was one of the most classic scenes, you know, ever in
Yeah, I love it.
in Moonraker. It was such a classic scene.
That turn from
Yeah, that's right.
absolutely not. Wingnut.
That was Wingnut. We'll talk about Wingnut in a minute. So it's just such a classic chase. Now Bond realises he's coming up to the end of the falls.
Yeah.
Now this is where we cut from the Everglades, obviously, to the Iguazu Falls. He'll pull the line now. So did you wear? So he's got a helmet on there. Did you wear a helmet?
I didn't, but Stevie Fenson did
Right. Okay.
when he did the second takeoff, which they used because he's sooner than me.
So here we go. Then that's you.
That was a simulation.
That's a simulation, right?
Because the guy didn't have the film in the camera when I flew over. And it was very noisy there,
Yeah.
so he didn't hear me coming.
Right. Okay. So now Bond's going through the air. Now that's you.
Yeah,
That's you now. And you're flying through the air.
but I'm lower than the river.
Right. And now this is where you.
I don't,
That's where you crash.
I
Yeah.
don't want to go into the waterfall.
No, obviously. And this was it. And then the crash.
After coming down 3 feet on a piece of rope.
Right. Okay. So there you go. I mean, it's the scene is such an iconic scene. It's your part in it was small, but so iconic
Well,
because everybody knows that. Everybody knows
yeah.
when that thing comes up and they come out. That what you said about it coming over the top. It is actually they did say that was a matte painting which somebody had painted of the waterfalls, and that they obviously put that in with special effects. But the rest of it, I mean, it was.
I mean, I did it, but they just didn't have the film in the camera.
Yeah. They didn't have the film in the camera, or they just forgot to press
No,
record.
they had the film in a cool box because of the heat there.
Right. Okay.
But they couldn't hear me coming, so only when I'd gone over their heads did the man get the film out and put it in the camera.
Right. Okay. So now, what a lot of people also don't know is you actually did crash into them trees,
Yeah.
but you didn't hurt yourself.
No.
So you were. I mean, did you hit the tree tops, or how can we imagine you coming into that crash?
Well, I could see 2 trees, and I aimed for my wingtips to hit the 2 trees, which is what slowed me down.
But
enough.
yeah, but what if one wingtip would have hit that one first? That would have spun you around, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it could have gone wrong.
I think you just had a lot of luck on your side that day,
Yeah.
didn't you, John?
Yeah, you can make your luck as well.
Okay.
Mm.
We were talking, you said when that speedboat came over and jumped into the river, you said that was Wingnut. And we
Yeah.
were talking about Wingnut earlier. John was telling us that Wingnut was a stuntman and he was called Wingnut. Why, John?
Because his ears stuck right out.
So,
He was a nice guy.
yeah. So, but you said to me earlier, tell the people what you said about that jump. Because you said that Wingnut, you offered to give him your belt.
Oh yeah, I had my scrambling body belt, which supports your middle in that sort of situation, and I offered it to Wingnut to use, and he didn't bother. He didn't bother to use anything. He just flew through the air with the greatest of ease, crashed down onto the water. He was very brave.
Right. So there you go. That's from the man himself, and we sometimes thought that might have been a puppet in that boat, but it was a stuntman, Wingnut, as we all know his name now.
Yeah.
What's your most vivid memory of filming? Was it more in South America, or was it more in Florida? What's the thing where you go, I'll never forget that?
Well, I don't think I'll ever forget looking down at the river, because it was a mental thing to do, to fly over the river.
You mean the waterfalls or the waterfalls?
Well, the waterfalls go into the river.
Right, okay, yeah, so that's what you mean.
And it's a very, very heavy river. And I thought I'd only be seen it once, and I ought to look down.
Yeah.
So I did. A bit frightening.
So it was clear to you that you were only going to do one take of this flyover?
Not really. There was one clever person there who suggested 3 different flights.
Right.
And they wanted me to end up standing up in 3 feet of water, so Roger could stand in 3 feet of water with a glider above his head and walk ashore.
Right.
But I think they were a bit out of touch with reality.
Right. Okay. So you did so that was the first and last take you did. You did that. You flew over. You crashed, and that was it.
They got exactly what they wanted.
Right. Which is quite rare, because even like I've heard that in Casino Royale, when Daniel Craig's going into his car as James Bond, they did that 24 times. You know, he walked to the car, opened the door.
Yeah.
They did it again and again and again and again, so that they get the perfect shot. That they got the perfect shot. Well, obviously, if the guy had had the film in the camera, it would have been even better.
Yeah.
But they got enough for what they needed for that scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you have any memories of any of the other people that were on set? You said Wingnut, but any other people? Do you remember any of the cameramen or any of the producers, the director? Who were the people that you had the most to do with?
Well, I think Mr. Broccoli was super, a really nice man. Roger Moore, name dropping, was the only man I've ever met who could swear more than me. We both swore profusely when we were talking free. He really was a super bloke, and he wasn't always polite about some of the creeps.
Right, okay. But that was Roger. I mean, he was everybody loved Roger, and Cubby as well.
Yeah.
They were 2 of the most loved people on set.
Super.
But I suppose it's a work environment like any other, really, isn't it? It's people are going to work and doing their job. You were doing your job. It was it was nothing. Did you know back then how big Bond was and how much of an impact it might be making what you were doing?
Well, Mr. Broccoli asked me if I'd seen the start of a certain Bond, and when I told him I'd never seen a Bond film, everybody around laughed their heads off. But it was the truth. I'd never seen a Bond film, and even the one that I was involved with, I watched to the bit that I do comes, and then I switch it off.
Right. Okay. But it's still. I mean, but do you watch a Bond film when it's on the TV? Do you? I mean, is it something you might watch?
Oh,
you do.
Now,
yeah.
Got to.
Okay. Did you go to the premiere?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
You went
I
to.
did.
Where did you? Do you remember where that was? Was it in?
Yeah, something square.
Leicester Square. Leicester Square. In London.
Yeah, I went
well, that's
there.
where they always had them in the past, but they were obviously different ones. And
yeah, I got an autograph there. I can't think of her name.
Britt Eklund.
Britt Eklund.
Yeah.
I got Britt Eklund's autograph, but when I asked for her autograph, I did call her Pretty Lady, and I think she was offended
Right.
by that.
Well, I don't know why. Well, maybe it was the way you said it, John.
No,
Because normally
I
she
was
wouldn't
polite.
be. Yeah.
Well, that's what she looked like to me, a pretty lady. But
Yeah.
there you go.
So what happened after? I mean, what happened after Bond? Was there any? I mean, did you? I mean, the film came out. It was a success. Did you have any work on the back of that? Did you? You know, were you the hang glider from Bond, or did that not really matter to you because you were doing other things anyway?
Well, it mattered. I mean, I'm very proud to have been involved in it, but my mate and I did loads of slide shows and talks and answering questions on it. But there was another film coming up, which was an advertisement for the co-op, and we had to go to Turkey to do that. Unfortunately, for him, the director decided to have a safety barrier removed so that it wasn't in shot, and he stepped back one day and went over the edge of the cliff and was killed.
Oh no.
So that stopped that, but otherwise I would have been doing that.
It wasn't the first time we saw a hang glider in a James Bond film. 1973, Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
There was a hang glider. Well, it was a tow glider, as we now know, which was used when Bond flies over Kananga's Island and drops down. Now, the guy that flew that back then was called Bill Bennett, and you knew Bill Bennett.
Well, I didn't know him, I knew of him. A very famous man. The whole family were flyers, but unfortunately I think the whole family was killed flying.
Okay, so, but I mean, Bill Bennett was, I heard that Bill Bennett was one of the forefathers of gliding, that he was one of the guys that actually invented the sport.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if it was like one of them things that you knew, that somebody had invented the sport, that that was Bill Bennett was like a guru to everybody, but if you know of him, that was, you knew.
Yeah, but they started off with bamboo poles and sheets of plastic to make their first glider.
Unbelievable.
And they used to run down a hill and just glide along parallel to the ground. That's how it started.
Yeah. So, and 73, I mean, the Live and Let Die hang glider, which I have in my collection, by the way, that was, when I see that, and it's just like aluminium poles and a bit of like tent, a bit of tent sheets over the top, then you think, how can people even go out over 10 feet above the ground with one of them?
Yeah.
But in the 6 years after, from Live and Let Die to Moonraker, things had happened. Obviously, there had been a lot of advancement in the technology. As we can see on your wing, it's a lot wider and a lot sleeker than the wing that Bill Bennett used in Live and Let Die. So there was obviously a change in the dynamics of how you were flying. You were telling us earlier about how you fitted motors, obviously, to them as well to fly.
There was still room for improvement.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how good they are today. I mean, they're probably, it's probably all carbon and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I mean, is there any other interesting stories you'd like to tell the people while we're here? There's probably 1,000 of them, right?
I don't want to get locked up.
Well, I think that's quite an interesting chat. I don't think there was anything else that we've missed. You were telling them some stuff earlier while we were just chatting beforehand, but I think everything was covered now. I would say that's great. We've got enough to put together. People will be interested in the story and some of the things that you did, and I hope everybody enjoys the interview, and we'll see you again on the next episode.